I think people underestimate how literally we and the rest of the industry mean it when we say that we're building an AI employee.
I'm thrilled to be joined by Flo Crivello, founder and CEO of Lindy. Lindy integrates with over 1,600 business apps like Slack, HubSpot, and the Google Suite, automating repetitive work using no-code AI agents. How many of your employees would you say are AI?
I would say we would need to be about twice as big.
You had some interesting roles at Uber. What you learned from that experience?
It's the importance and the value and the possibility and the meaning of agency. It's another memes these days on Twitter, like high agency and so forth. And I think it's hard to understand what it really means until you've lived it.
If you think forward a decade or so, what do you think typical companies going to look like?
Welcome to Notable Perspectives, a podcast from the team at Notable Capital, where we sit down with some of the most fascinating founders and builders in the AI era. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hey everyone, I'm Glenn Solomon, and today on the podcast, I'm thrilled to be joined by Flo Crivello, founder and CEO of Lindy. Lindy integrates with over 1,600 business apps like Slack, HubSpot, and the Google Suite, automating repetitive work using no-code AI agents. The Lindy website invites you to meet your first AI employee. Simplest way for businesses to create, manage, and share agents with just a prompt. Very cool. Things like customer support, outbound sales calls, meeting recording, it's all available through Lindy. So I'm very excited, Flo, to dig in with you and talk to you about what you see for the future of Lindy and future of AI and agents more generally. And also your story, how you landed this idea for Lindy. It involves a fascinating pivot. And I'm excited to dive into that as well today. And would love to also, you've been such a successful entrepreneur, maybe dig into your wisdom and have you share some insights for other would-be entrepreneurs. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So maybe, just to start, level set, I gave teased a little bit about what Lindy does, but maybe for the folks who are listening and watching who aren't as familiar, tell us a little bit about what Lindy actually does.
Yeah, I think the AI employee is the easiest way to describe it. One notch deeper, it's a no-code platform allowing businesses to automate various operations and various tasks using AI agents. As you named it, but does a lot of sales, does a lot of marketing, does a lot of customer support, does a lot of document processing, and so on and so forth. I think of all the last 3 years, AI agents have gone from this technology that didn't really work to a technology that worked, but like it was hard to deploy, like very much required an engineering team. And now is making what I call, the leap to what I call the Macintosh moment, where it's like it works and anyone can use it and anyone can deploy it. And I think that's going to be the story of AI agents over the next 12 months or so.
Fascinating. And yeah, I invite everybody to visit your website and you can see, like, you can get started very, very quickly at these things. So maybe now that we've level set, let's take a brief history tour. You've got amazing personal journey and would love to hear how that's influenced where you are today. You moved from France to the US with, I think you've said, basically no money, no plan or network. What was, take us through that decision. What influenced you to maybe come to the US and how's that impacted your approach to building companies?
Yeah. Not to get too political, but since you're asking, I'm libertarian and the word doesn't exist in French. It is hard to explain how alien the idea of libertarianism is to a French mind. It's literally like the Twitter memes, like the European mind cannot comprehend. And I also had started like a very small, I don't even want to call it a startup, it was like a small like agency in Paris. And so you really get that front row seat at frankly the ugliness of socialism. It's just like the system doesn't work, like taxation is extremely high. it's really hard to build a business in these conditions. And in return for building this business and providing jobs to people, what you get is contempt and hatred because you represent it's a Marxist frame over there. So I read Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand at the age of 17. And you let it stew. And at 17, like your psyche is still quite malleable. And you let it stew, And then to me, the tipping point was the night François Hollande, the socialist candidate in a socialist country, got elected. And I was already seeing this country being unlivable. And then I saw it double down. And I remember distinctly watching the results of the elections on election night, and I was watching the TV with my girlfriends. Then François Hollande gets elected, and I'm like, bad. And so nobody me, I'm not in that build my life in this country. I can't do it. This is not my values. And I was perhaps 19 or 20. And like you said, that it was a very brash decision. 3 months later, I had closed my company, given back my apartment, broken with my girlfriend, and moved to San Francisco with, like you said, no money, no plan, no network, no job, very little command of English. I really started to make a deliberate effort to write up on my English because it was not good. However, 60 accent is right now. You should have seen what it was back then. I can't tell you, on a weekly basis, at least I think back with just extreme gratefulness for the 20-year-old me, for that decision he made, which just with no hesitation was the most important and best decision of my lifetime. And every time somehow French news reach me, I don't know if it's saying right now, they have the 5th prime minister in 2 years, and there's riots again, which happens once or twice every single year. And every time I'm I'm so bad I'm out.
Well, they say life comes down to just a couple of key moments and key decisions. It sounds like that your 20-year-old self made a big, important decision for you. Maybe another important decision for you was going to work at Uber. Curious, you had some interesting roles at Uber and involved with some interesting projects. How formative were your years at Uber in now being an entrepreneur? What did you learn from that experience? Maybe what do you have to unlearn from that experience to where you are today?
Yeah, it was extraordinary for me. I really think of it I really grew up at Uber professionally. But I had to unlearn the learnings that are very much not transferable pretty much anywhere else. Is look, Uber have infinite money. So there was this meme at Uber that was the first reflex of everyone was to say, it's not a problem if money can fix it. So it's anytime I had a point, how can people get to fix this money, right? We had this edict from Travis to expand as much as you can, to grow as fast as you can, and don't worry, I'll raise for the other side, right? And you were, right? So that doesn't work at Solid. But what does work, and what they did learn there is the importance and the value and the possibility and the meaning of agency. It's another meme these days on Twitter, or high agency and so forth. And I think it's hard to understand what it really means until you've lived it, especially because money can be that unblocked for that agency. What it means, you're taking that of kids, frankly, young, I was 23 when I arrived at Uber, and I was surrounded 23 to 25-year-olds given infinite money to perform impossible tasks. And it worked somehow. And everybody just stumbles along the way, and it was on my French, a shit show, when you give 20 to 25-year-olds, it doesn't always go well. But I remember, just to give you 2 examples, one of them was I joined, and at first I joined the driver org, working on the driver app and the supply side of the business. And it was quite late at that point in Uber's journey. It was 5 years in, so hardly early days. And yet, so if you think from first principles, hey Glenn, you have to design the driver app for Uber. What are the 2 most important things you put in there? You put, I want to drive and I want to see my buddy, right? Oh yeah, the latter part was missing 5 years in. So I joined the driver app, and I was an iOS engineer at the time. I opened the driver app, and I'm I have no way to see my earnings. And then I got to support people who at the time were called come-ups and delegates. So I filed the customer finance, and there's so many support tickets every day just to ask how much money they made. I'm that's insane. Why have we not done that? And the response to me was yeah, you should do it. There's me, and a weekend, it's just go ahead and do it. Oh, okay. And so I did it. I just projected our team, and we had some designers, and we built the driver part, the earnings part of the driver rack. And even more extreme example, was one night I was at the office at 9 p.m., which wasn't particularly late for Uber. Like we served the dinner at like 8:45 p.m. every day. And so I was having dinner at the office, and there was this guy. He's famous now. His name is Andrei Liskovich. If you Google him, he played a role in the Ukraine war. Like maybe he was the third person we had it on it after practice. And I didn't know him, and he was sitting next to me for dinner, and he pitched me this idea. He was like, "Hey, I had this idea." He was a data scientist at the time at Uber, and he actually had this idea. He was like, "Wouldn't it be neat if we could do Uber for like all labor, like Uber works, so like the Uber of staffing agencies?" I was like, "Hey, he's pretty neat," and sort of started jamming about it. And like at 10:30 p.m., we were like still talking, and we basically we pitched it to Ryan and Graves. We pitched it to a couple of other people, and they're like, "Yeah, go do it. Go spend a bunch of money," which has quick settle space for people. So I just like to spend a couple $1 million on this and like and report back. And what we did with our couple $1 million was like we rented an Airbnb in lieu of an office. We flew down to LA. We hired temp workers. We built an app. We did all of that by ourselves. And I was at the time an iOS engineer. At the time, he was a data scientist, and we were given that commission to do this crazy thing. So yeah, I think the meaning and importance and power of agencies is the thing you may take away from home experience at Uber.
Just curious, the first example you gave, putting earnings into the driver app, did that engender more driver loyalty? Did you see like change in behavior as a result of giving people more information?
Oh, for sure. I don't remember like the exact measurable results, but like, we got a lot of love. Like drivers were like, fine, I don't need to send an email to support anymore to know how much money I've made. Yeah.
Amazing. It's sometimes the little things that really drive tremendous value to products for people. Great insight. Okay, so you're at Uber, young as a young professional, learning a lot, developing agency. When COVID hit, you built a startup, Teamflow, scaling it into a $50 million plus company, I believe. You had 50 plus employees, and during the pandemic, Teamflow has ultimately been pivoted into Lindy. So maybe start the Teamflow. What drove you to start the company? What opportunities did you see? And how did it go?
Yeah, it happened very organically. So for context, my goal moving here was always to start a company. I had a checklist, which, by the way, I do not recommend people do. Like some old fan calls it the deferred life plan. Like I do not recommend people do that. And in hindsight, I wish I had started that business a couple of years earlier. But my checklist was like, oh, okay, I'm moving here. One, I want a learning page. I want to like be better at English. I want to have a green card. I want to have network, and I want to have savings, but I had no safety net whatsoever. And so I went to that. Oh, and I want skills, obviously. And so, at Uber, that's why I made the switch to product manager. So I went about checking each item of that checklist dutifully, and until I felt right. And what I felt really was like, I'll take like 6 months off. That was right before COVID. And my initial plan was to go backpacking across Southeast Asia. And that did not happen because of COVID. Also, I don't think it could that I did. And so COVID hits, I'm like, snap, I called backpacking. So it's usually anyway, I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure it out. So go home, and then quarantine, everyone is stuck at home. And I'm a nerd. Like, what do I do when I'm stuck at home at code? It's compulsive. And so it happens very organically. I did not connect the dots at first because I had started building and hacking together a solution. It's like a spatial video conferencing solution where you see your video in a bubble. You have like a literal office, like a top-down view of a virtual office, like scenes aside, and you can move your video bubble around, and you can only hear and be heard by people around you. Yeah. And at first, I was like, oh, this is cool. I just did it because I thought it was interesting. And then I stopped to have my friends over that virtual space because we were all quarantined. So we start like to hang out in the virtual space. And then at some point for me it clicks, and I'm like, oh my God, every company is going remote right now. There is probably tremendous willingness to pay for this. And so very organically, I can't overemphasize how organic it was. Like at no point did I sit myself down and when like, this is it, I'm building a startup. I had a VC friend on the phone randomly one night, and it was like, hey, I have like 1 week left to deploy some QSBS, maybe or something like that before I have to take taxes on it. So can you please take my $500 grand? I'm like, sure. I will free you from the builder. And so it just happened like that. And then I started releasing it, and like I got like tremendous customer love and engagement. And then we raised a seed round, and it just started from there.
When did you make the decision that you needed to pivot? What led to that? That's a difficult moment for many founders. While there are points of iteration along the way in startups all the time, the decision to kind of really shift gears is a tough one. So tell us about that decision and how it transpired for you.
I actually find in my case, like the more painful part was not the decision itself. If anything, I remember the decision as a moment of relief. I think the more painful part is the couple of months that precedes the decision or 6 months or 12 months. Because obviously, if you're deciding to pivot, that things are not going well, like that's the really, really, really painful part. And in our experience, like Teamflow, the virtual office, was going really well when people went remote. It was going really poorly when people returned to the office. And so the growth had flatlined and things were not going well. In parallel to that, we had done some experiments because from Teamflow, we had meeting recorder. From the meeting recorder, we used the GPT-3 API, which had just been unreleased, to build a meeting summarizer. From that, we built the thing that would update your CRM from your meetings, first your Salesforce, then your hotspot. And this was all before ChatGPT. And this was all before the chapter about AI agents. Like LangChain just came out as a GitHub library, like Harrison Chase had not started as a company yet. And so, simultaneously, Teamflow was flatlining, and we got excited about this vision that was coming together about using LLMs, not just to generate texts, because at the time, everyone just thought these things were just good to generate texts, but to perform actions for you. And I remember distinctly, I came probably within an hour of closing the company, frankly. I was like, okay, this is it. Like, we got a lot of capital left in the bank. Like, we've been very disciplined about managing our burn. Like, this is it. The pet didn't pet out. And then I was like, there is one more swing in there. Not just in the capital management in me. And there is this idea that like, it's either I have to look very hard, like we're very excited about this one idea. And so I let go of 2/3 of the team, the go-to-market 2/3 of the team. And already the rest of the team, we were perhaps dead left or something, 10 or 12 left. And I was like, we'll do this. And truth to be told, I think people share, like, it's never pleasant to let go of a core of the team and to see your coworkers leave. But I think they share like excitement about the vision, and they share their relief about like we're all going to let go of this unhealthy business, which nothing we did moved the needle at that point in that other business.
In most of these instances in my career, I've seen people kind of hold on to a little bit of the old while also trying something new. So not doing the hard pivot. It sounds like you really did a hard pivot. How critical was that in your mind to, getting success up going with Lindy?
Super, super important. Elad Gil, who is an investor in Lindy, warns against this failure load, and so is particularly cognizant of it. He does say people overly anchor on the previous idea. Naval calls it, he's like, building a startup is like surveying an infinite jumble, because the search space is really infinite, an infinite dense jumble from the top of a helicopter. And every so often, at some point, you see a spot of the jumble that you like, and so you land there and you start to like cut around you, and then you see there's something there. If there is nothing there, you don't keep hacking your way around the jumble. You climb back into the helicopter. So that's what we did. I think it was the right decision.
Very cool. I love that analogy. Okay, so let's talk more about Lindy now. As we mentioned earlier on, it is a horizontal agent platform. And I think a lot of companies in and around this area have chosen to be much more specific in what they focus on. Sales, support, other use cases, more vertical. What gave you the conviction to build a horizontal platform? And how did you arrive at that decision? And do you think it's been the right one?
I do think it was the right one, but I will help. Things are going well so far. Yes, the startup common wisdom is to build very narrow and very practical. I think people are a little bit too prone to dispense a very universal sounding startup wisdom. I think startups and tech at this point are the economy right? There's speed tech and there's health tech and there's green tech and there's like everything. And so it's like, look, your mileage way better, right? And so I find one of the most important questions to ask myself when I started eventually is to ask myself, what category does it belong to? Because it frames the startup, it teaches you about what the category has learned so far. And I looked around and I was like, okay, if you want to build an AI employee, what's the closest thing technologically to an AI employee right now? And I think it's iPaaS. I think it's all of the automation solutions. So UiPath is more like RPA like that, but like Workato and a bunch of other companies. So I started to like look into this category. And this category of all categories traditionally is horizontal. And I think the reason for that is because the job of automation, the job to be done of automation is horizontal, and you end up building primitives that apply horizontally across a variety of use cases in a variety of industries. Now, it doesn't mean you don't pick an ICP. I still think you have to pick one lane and one segment in particular to play in. But for that segment, I think the segment and the customer themselves are actually eager to adapt a horizontal solution that can help them solve a lot of their automation problems.
So along that path, you've been you launched recently Lindy Build, which is putting more and more power into the hands of the user. It seems I can create an entire back end, a front end, a database, all with Lindy Build. The thing will even QA itself. Tell us about like that product, how it came to be, and where it portends you're going as a company.
Yeah. In a way, the product, at least technically, is the horizontal thesis playing out, because the horizontal thesis was always like, we are going to build loadable, composable primitives, like Lego blocks, that are going to snap together, and there's going to be this combinatorial explosion of capabilities that are downstream of the existence of these primitives. In a way, not to get too dirty or philosophical, but like that's how life works, right? This is like loadable previews or like cells just like snap together that you have, or like cellular automata and so forth, work the same way. So, we released, about 8 weeks ago now, Lindy 3.0, which is composed of two things. One is an even easier way to build AI agents. Because until 3.0, the way you had to build AI agents was like to use the no-code editor to treat fields. So like you could drag a prompt, boxes, arrows. With 3.0, it's literally just a prompt. So you're like, I just want an agent to do my customer support form. And that's it. And then it's just asking questions. It just builds the agent for you. It's quite magical. That's the first thing. That's 3.0. The second thing, which led to being built, is Lindy Automate. So it's we and iPaaS as a whole is always, by the way, iPaaS, integration platform as a service, is always bottlenecked by the number of iterations that it supports. And so for the last 2-3 years of our existence as a startup, it's always been such a thorn in our shoe. Like we have to build, we built 6,000 integrations. And I think eventually we just realized it's never going enough. You're always going to be bottlenecked by integrations until you can do the same things that a human can do, which is look at a screen and click a mouse and type for people. So we gave that virtual computer in the cloud to Lindy, to the agent, which included the terminal. So there was a browser and if you had a box in the cloud, might as well just give it the terminal. And then I remember very distinctly, I think I can probably the exact date, because it was the Thursday before the launch. The launch was on a Monday, and the Thursday before at night, at 9 p.m. or something like that, and we were like grinding for the launch. And this teammate comes to me and is like, Flo, you better come see this. And so I walk around to his desk, and he shows me, it's like I just prompted Lindy and I asked her to build the web app. And it did its first shot. And then it not only did that, so it used the terminal that we gave. This is the emergent capability. Like when you build that product, just emerged from the existence of the terminal. So we asked it to do that and just use terminal to code and deploy the web server and do all of that. But instead, it also used its own web browser, unprompted. It's like, okay, I built the web app you asked me to. Now let me try it. Opens its web browser, opens its own work, clicks around, finds its own bugs, goes back, fixes it. And that was, I think, one of the most holy shit moments of my career. I was blown away. And so we released that. In a way, it was supply journal. It was like, oh, we've got it, we're going to release it. And it's taken off into it quite well. Like people are having a blast building all sorts of total tools using it to build.
Yeah. And on your site, I love you give a lot of examples of prompts that people can use to get things going. But I do think that you mentioned it earlier, inertia has been a challenge with getting, AI, and in your case, like your next AI employee spun up in companies. What do you think it's going to take to overcome inertia, both for Lindy and more generally AI? Obviously, it's being adopted rapidly, but there are still plenty of opportunities for AI to play a bigger role at companies today. What are some of the friction points that need to be ironed out?
It's got to be easy to deploy. It's got to be reliable enough. I think we're just going to walk along that technology curve. And I think to some extent, like, yes, we're going to do all of these things. I think to some extent, there's also a large psychological component, which you can't accelerate that up too much. I think people are very turks to adapt this technology at their own pace, unfortunately. Yeah.
Have you been surprised by any unlocks along the way where people have adopted, certain use cases more rapidly, or surprising things that people have adopted using the Lindy platform that you didn't anticipate? You mentioned this, like site builder, tool builder, other things you've seen.
Perhaps one that you don't expect is people are using agents a lot for like just ingesting a huge amount of information about their business and dispatching it back. I always think of it as like a heartbeat of the company, where it's like you have like a central agent that just sucks up all of this knowledge, because that's what the LLMs are really good at on day. It's like, there's been now that they have millions of tokens in the context windows. They can ingest so much information so fast and then summarize it back, and you can save so much time of and value time, because executive probably spend so much of that time just ingesting information, trying to synthesize it and make sense out of it. And so we've seen that pattern that I did not expect. And this is also one of my favorite Lindy use cases, where people use agents to, for example, read all the support tickets that happen in one day in the company, or ingest the transcript of all the sales calls that happen in one day in the company, and or see all the Slack messages that happen in one day in the company, and then hoover all of this up, and then dispatch it back down to the company, and in a form of like a bullet point summary. And so I find that it fosters a lot more consistency and a lot more alignment inside the company, because now everyone is like aware of what everyone else is doing.
Very interesting. Alignment, driving alignment that way. I would also think you could spot anomalies more rapidly, which is so critical, right? And oftentimes, in a sea of a lot of information, it's difficult to distill an anomaly that's starting to occur. Maybe it's a problem with the product, a new release, or something that's going on in the world that's impacting a company in a way it wasn't anticipated. To me, that feels like creating a more agile company as a result is one of the potential net benefits of adopting AI more rapidly.
100%. And also, it turns on the lights. There is this, for example, Sebastian wrote this essay. It's called Default Blind. Well, he uses this analogy. He's like, if you got the liquor store and all of a sudden you see a batch of Asian people walk through the door and buy red envelopes. You're like, what's happening here? And then you learn about like the Chinese New Year, or like they give each other red envelopes, and like you decide you buy all red envelopes for like the next year and all of that stuff. If you have an e-commerce website, you don't see the pattern immediately. By default, until you really look for it, it's really hard to find these patterns. You don't see it. And so every tech company is default blind. They have no idea what's going on in their business. This I have failed to tell on the lights. I receive these reports all the time, and I do see these patterns, and it's like, oh, people are starting to use, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we started to have a bunch of dentists book demos with us. And I was like, what's happening with dentists? And there is that bucket of dentists that are starting to use us to automate some of the back office operations. I wouldn't have known that, or I would have known it much later if it wasn't for this agent.
Maybe, maybe Lindy is encouraging the consumption of candy amongst young kids, such as causing more dentists to do it. Okay, so one of the things that you face, and a lot of companies building the AI area face, is some reliance on research and frontier research, frontier lab innovation going on, whether it be from OpenAI or Google or Anthropic or others. How do you think about that? On what models do you base, the Lindy agents today? And do you think this is a risk for businesses like yours or an opportunity? And just curious how that plays into your thinking longer term.
Yeah. We all model agnostic, so you can decide which model you want to use, not only on the per agent basis, but even on the per step basis of each of your agents. That said, like the default model currently is Cloud Full Sonnet, which is my personal favorite model. My pet peeve is when entrepreneurs totally dismiss the threat of the frontier labs entering the market. It's like, it's going to be fine. It's like, look, you'd be a fool not to keep them in the corner of your life and be at least somewhat worried about them. That said, the case to be made to not worry too much about them is, well, one, there's nothing you can do about it. So it's like, there's no point using sleep, there's also something you can't control that much. Two, I think there's this weird thing that's happening right now in tech and in AI where, because these products and companies are powered by LLMs at the core, they think that somehow the rules of SaaS are suspended. And it's like, no, like the LLM is just another building block. It's like a new technology that you use, but the rules remain the same. Like you have to obsess about a particular problem and a particular customer and a particular job to be done. And I think that your competitive advantage comes from that focus on the particular ICP and the particular job to be done. And these labs, their customers mostly today are, well, in the case of OpenAI, it's like consumers and like developers. And it's a different ICT and it's a different job to be done from the one also like. I'm not so far building agent orchestration platforms. So I keep my head down and I keep focusing on my customer and not my competitors too much.
Yeah. I mean, the best analogy I can think of here is the database market where, clearly Oracle was the OpenAI of its day. But there was, by the way, I'm glad to hear that Claude Sonnet is your model of choice today. We're a travel investor in Anthropic, but like they're similar to the way the frontier lab market and frontier model market has evolved. If you go back a couple of decades, the database market evolved and Oracle started developing its own applications. So I'm sure there was a concern back then, oh my gosh, if you're building applications, now Oracle is going to crush you. And obviously Oracle had some success with application builds, although their primary business up until very recently, it's really the database. But it's left massive opportunities for companies that were very focused on their workflows, their customers, their ICP. I suspect this will be similar, but history does have a way of repeating itself, or at least rhyming, and I suspect that's the way this is going to go.
100%. Helpful. Just to do something you probably Oracle alumni, just building more like the application layer.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like your vision and future state, and maybe you can get some advice you'd have for others. What's building a team like? What's been building a team like in the AI era? Any particular challenges or unique elements of building a team in this kind of market? And have you done anything differently than you would have done in say prior eras to be successful building magic team in the AI world?
Nothing qualitatively different. I think intensity and hard work always matters in startups. I think it matters more than ever in AI because it's just so competitive, it's so fast moving. And so I give the end I sell even stronger than before when I talk to candidates. And I very often people opt out. Like literally 2 days ago, we had a candidate opt out because I was like, hey, this is a lot of work. Are you sure you want to sign up for this? And I sold her so much. Just like, no, I don't. Which is great. This is why you do it. I think to some extent I'm going to plug Lindy a little bit here. Like it's made hiring easier. Like I have an agent that I built. There's also like a template for it on the website. It's like a recruiting agent. And literally for me, it is as easy as going like, hey, I'm looking for software engineers. Find me 200 software engineers working at this list of company, Figma and whatnot, in the Bay Area. Go. And that's literally just the prompt. And in the span of 2 minutes or so, I've reached out to 200 software engineers as me, and it sends for the emails and so on and so forth. So that helps as far as that's concerned. Otherwise, I would say like AI is a tailwind for recruiting because like the products are just so darn exciting to work on.
How much, meet your next AI employee. How many of your employees would you say are AI today? And you think about, Lindy and all the work you're getting done today versus, if you were trying to do something similar, but in the pre-AI, pre-agent era.
Yeah. I would say it's a great way to frame it. I would say we would need to be about twice as big if it wasn't for our use of the product. And you can see it in our metrics, like our overall really efficient, we're growing really efficiently right now. Like which you can measure using like build multiple and other metrics. And our build multiple is really low. We're growing quite fast for our size of company.
Yeah, I mean, this is fundamentally going to change the way I think the people gauge success at companies, and there's sort of what the expectations become with respect to, revenue per employee, output per velocity, per head count, et cetera. It's quite exciting. So if you think forward a decade or so, what do you think the typical company is going to look like? I don't know. Yeah. In 10 years time, I know it's hard to stretch the imagination that far, but things are going to be a lot different.
Yeah. I think people underestimate how literally we and the rest of the industry mean it when we say that we're building an AI employee. You are literally going to be able to, it's really as literal as you jump on a Zoom call with that. Bob, welcome to the company, except Bob's an AI. Share your screen with me. We've got coffee for you, so that's here. Share your screen with me. Your customer support agent fills your knowledge base, fills our Zendesk. Go and handle customer support tickets. Except Bob being an AI has infinite hours in the day, doesn't sleep, doesn't go on strike, and I'm French, but that builds that. Or take vacations, correct. And so I think that's coming. I think AGI is coming. I think people underestimate how real that's going to be. It's really hard to foresee the nature of the businesses that's going to exist. I forgot the exact word, I'm going to butcher it, but something like it is easy to forecast the automobile, it is hard to forecast the traffic or something. Or like the Walmart is like one of the second order effects of the automobile. Yeah. I often use the analogy of what the internet has done to media, I expect AI agents to do to the rest of business. Namely, I think it's going to be a tremendously equalizing force. If you consider Mr. Beast, right, like the top YouTuber today in the world, he's built that basically a media empire. He was like a nobody in the middle of America, and he had no crew, no capital, no equipment. It was just him and his talent and his taste that he built a media empire. I think the same thing is going to happen to business at large. I think the gap between idea and reality is going to shrink tremendously. And I think that scaling operations, which as every entrepreneur knows is so painful, that is 95% of the work once you got product market fit is really about scaling it. And that takes decades. It's just like, hey, I bet the thing, I want this, that times a million. Decades. It's so hard. I think that we can actually almost trivial. And I think that the nature of the businesses that come out of it is going to seem as alien to it as perhaps Mr. Beast would have seemed alien to like a CNN executive 20 years ago.
I love that. The gap between idea and reality shrinks in this world, and what the implications are of that. It reminds me, Brett Taylor recently likened the kind of where we are with intelligence today, going from scarcity to abundance, similar to prior sort of transitions like with power and energy and transportation, where at one point in the in the journey of industrialization, those things were scarce, they became abundant. And then expectations change, and just the way we live our lives changes. I think he used the example of like going to the supermarket and, seeing every variety of fruit available, and in prior, and how disruptive it would be to life if those weren't available. But the percentage of people involved in agriculture has dropped dramatically as that abundance has occurred, and going into a room and switching a light switch on and off. Imagine if light didn't exist the way we expect it to, and if intelligence goes through the same sort of metamorphosis over time in 10 years, what does that need for companies? And I'm curious, just to take this one step further, like for founders and would-be founders thinking about building their companies, and it takes, they should be thinking about what life's going to look like, not just a year from now, but 5 years from now and 10 years from now, if they want to build a lasting company. What do you think the implications are for, startups and how to think about building companies in this era? Anything that's been valuable to you that you want to make sure other people know?
Oh, it's great to sound like I'm what was the saying, like playing in my own book or something? Yeah. I'm giving you that chance. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is the opportunity for people to break out of the status quo and to break out of their routine in the way they've been doing things. And like, it's uncomfortable and it's uncertain because the playbooks are not nearly as defined. And at least the state of the technology today, look, like, truth to be told, like, we don't have the AI employee yet. It is not as reliable. It is not as performant. It is not as easy to use as a human. We don't have EDI. But for some cases, it's definitely there. For customer support in particular, definitely there. For SDR, definitely there. And so, yes, I think that there is going to be tremendous alpha and a huge opportunity now, like not in the distant future, today, for people to force themselves to adopt these new technologies right now. And I think what is an opportunity today is going to be a threat tomorrow in 5 years if you don't do it. It's like at first, if you adopt new technology like the computer, like you're more efficient as a business. If you wait too long and not still operating with fax machines, in 2010, like your business is not going to exist anymore. So I would urge people to adopt this earlier than they think they need to.
Do you think that is this the biggest misconception you think is out there? Is that like people with their heads in the sand and not adopting rapidly are likely to get disrupted or just not find the success they're looking for? Or there are other sort of misunderstandings out there in the market that you see?
I think that's the one. I think the technology is further along than people realize and you can't blame people because there's just so much hucksterism on LinkedIn and on Twitter. It's like I don't blame people for thinking it's all hype because truth to be told, it's 95% hype. That's 5% that they're real, and that 5% is improving faster than any technology has ever improved before in the history of technology. Truly, the AI agents today are so different from AI agents on 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And so I do urge people to find these that are actually making substantiated claims, however regular claims they sound, and to look into that.
It's interesting to hear you say, like, it's 5% today, but it's advancing as rapidly as anything you've ever seen. It kind of reminds me, again, history does have a way of at least rhyming, if not repeating, back to like mobile. And people were so excited about the emergence of mobile. There was a lot of, mobile washing, right? Companies were just like, create an awful app or some terrible online mobile experience and say, well, we're mobile too now. Mm-hmm. But what happened, and I remember like Facebook really adopted mobile successfully. There was a lot of skepticism. If you remember, like the IPO, the day of the IPO of Facebook, the company did not perform well. And there was all this consternation about mobile being a terrible trend for Facebook because, you couldn't advertise effectively on mobile. And it was probably that 5% moment. And then it became 10, 20, 50. Now, you wouldn't dream of having a business with a digital presence, and you wouldn't dream of having a business without digital presence. Say that any business with a digital presence has got to be strong on mobile, or else there's not a good future ahead. And I think the same is probably true for AI. We'll probably look back and have that realization at some point. So appreciate you saying that. Flo, really appreciate spending time with us today. This has been super insightful. And it's great to hear the success you're having with Lindy. It's very exciting. I think it's a harbinger of lots of great things to come, both for your company and for AI, and how it's going to impact the economy at large more generally. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for listening to Notable Perspectives, a podcast from the team at Notable Capital. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to give us a rating and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can learn more about Notable Capital by visiting notablecap.com.